I began to use drugs and alcohol when I was 19. I grew up without a mom, and that left a very hole in my soul, in my heart.
After I went off to college, my life just got really dark. I fell into just a very promiscuous life, and then a drug addictions for probably a good 5 or 6 years of deep addiction, to that, which just is even darker.
Very soon after I started, I got into heavy drugs. I began very quickly using crystal meth. I used solid for about 2 years. I woke up one morning and I didn't want to use again. And there is no other explanation for that other than God in my life. I continued to drink, thinking that that wasn't a big deal or that it wasn't going to hurt me. I still had some pain in my life.
And I found myself, I was probably 21 the first time that I was pregnant, and no thought about it at all. Knew immediately that I wanted to have an abortion. They take a sonogram of your child, and I remember them telling me that they couldn't see, my baby. And so they sent me home and told me I need to make another appointment in a few weeks. And probably a week after that, I had a miscarriage. So I ended up not obviously having an abortion because I had a miscarriage.
Continued to, pursue alcohol and drugs on a daily basis. I never just had a glass of wine or just, had a drink with friends. I was more or less drunk all the time. I met my husband, and very quickly after we met, I got pregnant, and we were very excited. And within the first 3 months, I miscarried. That pain took me to a place of loneliness. I woke up after the doctors had told me, and I felt very empty, and I couldn't find anything that would make me feel better. So I began to use prescription medication to fill that hole. And I took it daily, mixed with the alcohol still. And I woke up one day and I just physically and mentally and spiritually couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't. I was just exhausted in every way. And I didn't know how to go on from that point.
It was probably another year or 2 after that I was pregnant again. No thought about it. Made an appointment, went in, still carried the shame of the first time that I went. But I was so self-absorbed that it was just what I was going to do. And so I went in a second time. And this time, they could find the heartbeat of the baby. And, I remember laying there, and you have to actually sit there and listen to everything that they're doing. Remember the sound of it. Remember walking out and just being like, wow. It's just such a dark secret that I had. But it was probably less than a year I found myself there again. Third attempt to have an abortion. 2 of them were successful. And I carried that for many, many years.
So I turned to the only person I could think of at the time. It was the man that had married my husband and I. And he directed me to AA. So I went, and immediately I got a sponsor, and I began working the steps, and I dug in, and I got better. In my first year, I had a minor surgery, and I knew in my mind I still had medication hidden. And when I woke up the next morning, I had this urge to use. I knew it was there, and I was going to go for it, and I didn't know how to stop. And I remember my sponsor called, not by mistake. I don't believe in mistakes. God has a plan. And she was on the phone with me, and she asked me if I was okay, and I told her I wasn't, and that I wanted to use, and that I had medication stashed away. And she told me very calmly that she would come over and she would take me to a meeting if I needed to go, but to flush the medication. And I remember that was the first time that I really felt like the presence of God's arms around me. I sat on the phone with her, and it all happened in a matter of a minute, but it felt like years. I sat there with my arms stretched out over the toilet, wanting to throw the pills away, wanting to flush them. Every part of my being wanted to flush them, but I couldn't. I was frozen. And I literally felt God's arm come down my arm and pour those pills down the toilet. I could not have done that on my own. And that was another moment where I knew that the presence of God was with me, and that He was never going to leave. A lot of the pain that I felt growing up was that my mom had left. And that was very important to me, that God never leaves me, that He always was with me.
And I remember I was reading in Psalms 34:5, and it says, in 34:4, it says, I sought the Lord and He answered me, and He delivered me from all my fears. And then the scripture that just completely transformed my life was in verse 5. It says, and those that look to Him are radiant, and their faces are never covered with shame. And I knew at that point that I didn't have to carry it anymore. And so the Lord just began doing a very deep work in me at that moment. And I remember asking the Lord, how can you love me? How can you love me when I've taken, the life of two innocent children with absolutely no voice? Understanding, now that I'm with the Lord, understanding that those were wrong decisions. And the Lord said, because, I took it on the cross already. And you're mine now. You're my daughter. And I don't see you for that anymore.